Today on the Roundhouse, we're learning about how a rare auto carrier caboose is being saved from scrap. All aboard!
In days past, the roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is The Roundhouse.
Welcome to the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Ozerak. This is a special mini-sode to talk about the campaign to save Auto Train number 3, a very rare auto transport car that was used on the Auto Train in the 1970s. We're going to talk a little bit about what that is for those unfamiliar and why this car is so significant. And we are here with the president of Florida Adventures in Railroading. Please welcome to the Roundhouse, Mr. Mark Frazier.
Hello there. Thank you.
For folks who are unfamiliar with the Auto Train, can you give us a brief history of the train itself?
Sure. It started out on December 6th of 1971 was its first run from Lorton, Virginia to Sanford, Florida. Now, the Auto Train was the idea of Eugene Garfield. There had been some special legislation introduced to make this a possibility, and Gene took advantage of it. The concept of the train was you could get on the train in Lorton, Virginia, and you could drive your car to the terminal, and they would load it into auto carriers, and you would be loaded on board a train that was full of dome cars, full dome cars, diners, sleepers. It was a full experience when you got on board. The whole operation ran up into 1981, just shy of 10 years. There was the second run that ended up going between Louisville and Sanford. That was the train that Auto Train 3 was modified to be used on. The trains were long enough that they had to have a rear end flagman. After a few years of operations with the auto carriers up front, it was realized that it would give a smoother ride with the auto carriers on the rear, stopping the slack action. This brought about a need for a caboose. On the East Coast run, they used modified former Florida East Coast cabooses, which were built out of express box cars. They closed off the bay window and put a high wide vision cupola on those. For the Louisville run, they were limited to a certain number of cars. In order to not have one non-revenue car in the train, they met this need by converting 3 auto racks, which were number 3, number 6, and number 12. They put about a 25-foot caboose section. They put a platform on what was known as the B end, which was where the brake wheel was at. They put a rear platform on it, and they put about a 20 to 25-foot caboose section inside the car. Auto Train 3, 6, and 12 were converted to a caboose auto rack combine. This was to eliminate the need for a non-revenue car on a train that was limited to, I believe, 22 cars. The East Coast train would reach up to about 50 cars. So these cabooses were added so that they didn't lose car space for a full caboose. And what they were used for as far as auto transporting, they would put high-end expensive cars and or motorcycles into that auto rack. And that's how the car was used. And like I say, these cars only operated on the Louisville run. So that's a little bit about the auto train.
How did number 3 end up out in California, where it's at currently?
There are a few holes in that story. All that we know is that the car was taken to Sanford. At that time, it was full of everything from the Louisville terminal. Everything was packed up into that car on the last run out of the terminal. All the furniture, the desk, baggage carts, and things like that. It sat in Sanford until shutdown of the train. There was a huge auction at Sanford. A lot of cars were bought, but were never able to be moved. We don't know what happened with Auto Train 3 at that auction exactly. What we do know is it ended up being owned by a man by the name of Mark Dees. Some people may remember the private car, which was a baggage car called the Pony Express. That was Mark Dees' car also. The car was lettered MLDX 2957. We believe the MLDX would have been Mark Dees' initials, with the X indicating it's a private-owned car, but we have no idea what the 2957 alludes to. And we think there's some significance there. Now, the car was taken to the Fillmore and Western, where it's been used primarily as storage. The auto bay is still about 50 foot long, a little over 8 foot wide, and 5 feet 9 inches tall on both the upper and lower level. So that provided quite a lot of storage. It also has appeared in at least one music video, and they think at least one other movie shoot and possibly a TV shoot. It's currently painted boxcar red. It was once lettered Lionel, and the Fillmore and Western referred to it as the Lionel Caboose. We don't know the story about the Lionel lettering. We don't know a lot about what the purpose was intended for when Mark Dees took the car to the Fillmore and Western. That's kind of a mystery. We found out about the car. I had known about the car for quite some time now. However, it was not for sale. John Owen, who used to be a Auto Train employee, invited me to go with him in December to the 50th reunion of the Auto Train family. These were the actual employees on board the train who gave the train somewhat of its magic. During that meeting, John announced that he had been informed that Auto Train 3 was for sale and on a deadline to be removed from the Fillmore and Western. The Auto Train employees didn't have any structured group. Florida Adventures and Railroading, Flair, had just gotten to the point where we have been an established Florida not-for-profit corporation and have tax-exempt status. There was the interest there at the meeting about somebody doing something about it. Within the next 24 hours, I called the Fillmore and Western, talked to the owner at the Fillmore and Western, and we came to a price agreement. Now, the Fillmore and Western did lose their lease on the line, and there's going to be a new operator coming in. That's why there's such a tight deadline to get this car moved out of there. Currently, I have a certified car inspector that's supposed to go take a look at the car yet this week, make sure that it is railworthy. A non-certified inspector took a look at it and said that the car is in very good condition, none or very, very little rust, has 3 brand new wheel sets on it, 1 wheel set that has been turned. It has D22 passenger brakes. It's riding now on XB Express trucks. So there's a lot of mechanical details that make the car stand out on its own besides the style of the body. Our goal is to bring the car to Florida. It'll be going in a place that's called the Orange Park Station, which is just literally outside Jacksonville, basically on the other side of the St. Johns River from Jacksonville to the west. So that's where the Georgia 300 makes its home. It's also along the route of the auto train where the Amtrak auto train will be passing it twice every day. It'll be returned back to auto train colors. And beyond that, once we get it here, that's when we're going to try and figure out what our long-term plans are for it. But it will remain as a testimonial to Eugene Garfield and the employees of the auto train that made it happen. That, in a nutshell, is what we're doing.
It sounds like the car is in good enough shape to move on its own wheels, so that presumably helps with the cost. Can you do a bit of a breakdown in terms of how much you're looking to fundraise and where that money goes in terms of making the move and restoration happen?
We've got one fundraiser with a goal of $50,000. And I've had a lot of people say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. Well, as we break it down, we did break it down into three distinct phases. And the first and the priority phase is getting the car purchased. We figured that's going to take roughly $10,000. We have a purchase price right now of $7,500 cash that we can buy it for. Now that does not include acquiring insurance. We've got to join the Railroad Passenger Car Alliance, and we have to join the Railroad Passenger Car Numbering Bureau. And then we need to get all the information put into the UMLR system. Without being in UMLR, the railroads won't even talk to us because they have no idea what the car even is. So this is why we've got the certified car inspector going out to make sure of all these things. So we're figuring that $10,000 is going to cover the acquisition and all that stuff that you have to do. It's kind of like when you buy a car, the purchase price is only part of it. You have taxes and registration and all that stuff. Kind of the same deal on this. Since we don't have a price yet on this, all we can do is guess as what moving cost would be. The best information that we have at this point in time is passenger cars moving in freight service generally cost about $8 a mile on the main carriers. We're 2,500 miles from Fillmore. And that's running up right there at $20,000. We don't know if there's going to be other interchange fees, anything like that the railroads might charge. So we're figuring $20,000 to $30,000 to move the car. Now, once the car gets to Orange Park, we've got some rules we have to follow there. Being it's going to be displayed with Georgia 300, which is actually one of the POTUS cars, we have to keep up a certain appearance. So the first order of business when it gets to Orange Park is to get it back in white, purple, and red lettered auto train as quickly as possible. Now, it is in the city limits of Orange Park, and outdoor spray painting is forbidden. So this leaves us with three options. One, we paint the whole thing and we use rollers and brushes, mask off for the different colors. That's one option. Second option is to paint it white and put the stripes and lettering on it with vinyl. And the third option would be a complete vinyl wrap. Now, we're looking into how each of them will hold up and how much each of them cost. But right now, we're looking at another $10,000 in our budget that should cover those expenses and maybe help us a little bit with cleaning up the interior of it.
We're recording this on February 3rd of 2022. What is the deadline date?
I would like to have the car purchased by February 22nd, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in that area. That will keep us within the timeline that has been given by the county. There is already a new operator on the line, and they want everything off the line as soon as possible. Now, there may be some flexibility, as it's going to take us a while to meet all the railroad requirements out there. Obviously, I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm not going to go out to Southern California to work on this. So I've had to depend upon 3 other individuals who are feet on the ground out there to help me. We're right now feverishly going through all this paperwork that we have to get through to get the car moved.
Your organization is Florida Adventures in Railroading, and you've been established for a couple of years now. How does this car fit in with your organization's mission?
Our mission is to preserve and present Florida railroading history, artifacts, buildings, cars, or other artifacts as they can come into our possessions. This was one of those things that it was such a piece of Florida railroad history. We knew it had to be preserved. We're currently working on dealing with our local airport, who owns the last interurban station to exist in Florida, which came from downtown St. Augustine, built around 1911, 1912. So it's just a little over 100 years old. And sitting on the same property with it is the Florida East Coast Carpenter Shop from here in St. Augustine. Right now, we're looking for a new location for those to go to. The airport has agreed to donate them to us as long as we can find a place to move them to, and we cover the moving expenses. They're somewhat in danger also because the land that they're sitting on, the airport wants to develop here somewhere in the next 3 to 5 years. So those are going to become our next hot item. We also have one of our board members who is the owner of the Florida East Coast Fort Lauderdale, which eventually is planned to be brought into our fold also. Other than that, we're just keeping our eyes open for what else may be out there. Passenger cars are changing hands quite a bit right now, and we're hoping to put some stuff together that maybe hopefully someday we can run with some of the excursion lines.
Those seem like some interesting projects in their own right. This one in particular feels like it will fit nicely with that. Their website is flair.org. That's FLAIRR.org. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be looking forward to talking with you again in the future.
Thank you to Mark for joining us on the podcast today. You can learn more about the campaign at flair.org. We'll talk about the auto train more in detail on this show. It's a fascinating history. I definitely want to cover it here. You can listen to more episodes of The Roundhouse at theroundhousepodcast.com or wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Thanks for listening, and remember, as always, that the Roundhouse is our house.